A glowing flame beneath the snow. It was near the end of winter when the message came. The email was short, no photos, no attachments, just a few lines from a colleague Sora hadn't heard from in months. Northern Siberia. Ice is burning. Not just gas pockets, actual fire. We need someone who listens to the ground. Will you come? Sora Akimoto had studied permafrost for most of her life. She knew its quiet rules, how it held the earth in place like a lid, how it hid old forests and long-dead creatures beneath its frozen skin. She also knew that when permafrost melted, things changed. Slowly at first, then all at once. So she packed quickly. Layers of wool, field notebooks, sensor kits, and a small box of stones her grandmother had once blessed for protection. The journey took 5 days. Plane, train, truck, and finally a snowcat across wide white plains where wind had no walls to stop it. The research camp was small. 3 insulated shelters, a satellite antenna, and 5 people moving slowly in heavy coats. They greeted her with tired smiles and a strange mix of relief and tension. Something wasn't right. "Come see," said Malik, the expedition leader. They drove a short distance on a narrow trail of ice. Then they stopped. Malik pointed toward a low patch of snow-covered ground. It looked ordinary, but when he stepped forward and struck a metal rod into the snow, a thin blue flame danced upward. Sora froze. The air smelled faintly of gas, but the snow didn't melt. The flame burned above it. Quiet, steady, strange. "This isn't new," said Malik, "but it's growing, and it moves." He walked a few meters to the left and did it again. Another blue flame. The fire came from somewhere deep below. It burned cold. It burned without spreading, and no one could explain it. Sora crouched low, brushed the snow gently aside, and pressed her gloved hand to the ground. It was warm. Not hot like fire, not frozen like the air, just warm, as if something hidden beneath the surface had begun to stir. The wind passed overhead, whispering across the ice like a forgotten song. Sora stood up slowly, her breath white in the air. The land, it seemed, had begun to wake.
Arrival at the frozen field. The next morning, the temperature dropped to -30. Outside the research shelters, the sky stretched pale and clear. The snow glowed faintly under the early light, unbroken except for their vehicle tracks and a small ring of colored flags marking the first fire site. It looked peaceful until the wind came. Sora wrapped her scarf tighter and joined Walik by the main tent. "We have 5 confirmed spots," he said, pointing to a map with hand-drawn circles. "We marked the most active one last night, but another one appeared this morning." Sora looked up. "It moves?" "Not fast, but it travels. Every few days, a new patch starts glowing. Same blue flame, same warmth under the ice." They drove out again. This time, Malik brought 2 field assistants, Lena and Yuri. They carried sensors and glass vials for gas sampling. The snowcat crunched slowly across the flat ground until they reached a new spot. No flame yet, but a strange shimmer in the air just above the surface. Sora stepped down and scanned the area. She bent low and touched the snow. Cold, but beneath a soft dampness. "It's not ice anymore," she murmured. "It's melt." from inside.
Yuri drove a narrow probe into the ground. It hissed. He jerked back. "Gas pocket," he said. "Pressurized." Lena lowered a metal bowl and flicked her lighter. A flame jumped up instantly. No smoke, no color beyond that familiar ghostly blue. It hovered for a moment before dying again. Sora watched closely. "Did you see the edges?" she asked. "They curved outward, like something pushed from below." Later that day, back at camp, she reviewed satellite images from the past 3 months. Most showed nothing unusual, but one series, taken at night with infrared, revealed faint heat signatures in perfect round shapes just beneath the snow surface. The patches were growing, not wide, but deeper. Malik stood behind her. "Some think it's methane," he said. "Old gas trapped in the ice for centuries. When the permafrost thaws, it escapes." "That explains the flame," she agreed, "but not the pattern, and not the warmth without fire." They sat in silence. Then she asked, "Has anyone fallen sick?" "No." "Why?" "Because something living could also be causing this. A reaction, a release." "Like what?" "I don't know. That's the problem. I've studied thawing ice for 15 years, and I've never seen anything behave like this." That night, Sora couldn't sleep. She walked outside, wrapped tight in her coat. The sky was wide with stars. She walked past the outermost sensor pole and stood alone on the ice. Then she saw it. Far in the distance, a small flicker of light, low to the ground, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. It wasn't moving fast, but it was getting closer. By dawn, the flame had vanished. Sora marked the spot on her handheld GPS and brought it back to camp. The flame had been real, soft, blue, and flickering like a breath. But by morning, the snow was untouched, as if it had never been disturbed. Later that day, the team began digging. They chose the oldest flame site, the first one Malik had found. A ring of burned snow still marked the surface, but the ground beneath was frozen hard. It took hours to break through the upper layer of permafrost. Pickaxes, shovels, heated rods. They worked in shifts, stopping only when tools grew too cold to hold. At 1.2 meters deep, the ice turned strange, grayish, layered with pockets of dark material. "Organic matter," Sora said. "Old plants, maybe even animals." Lena pointed to a bubble trapped in the ice. Inside, something moved. It was only a gas swirl, methane likely, but it danced like smoke, curling slowly as if alive. They took a sample and sealed the core. That evening, Sora studied the excavation notes. Most of the flame spots aligned in a loose spiral, winding toward the southeast. The newer flames appeared closer together, tighter in shape. "It's not just random release," Sora said. It's pulsing." Malik frowned. "You think it's a pattern?" "I don't know what it is, but it's not chaos. Something is feeding it, timing it." They installed pressure sensors at various depths. Over the next 48 hours, the readings rose and fell like slow breathing. First pressure, then a burst of gas. The intervals were uneven, but repeated, 12 hours apart. Lena whispered, "Like tides, but underground." Sora agreed, or something trapped and struggling to rise. The next morning, a loud crack echoed across the field. Yuri, who had been checking a lower sensor, stumbled backward as steam poured out from a narrow split in the ground. Not smoke, just warm, damp vapor. He wasn't hurt, but the break startled everyone. Sora leaned close. The ground had fractured along a natural fault, narrow and clean. Inside the opening, a thin layer of frost shimmered, melting from below. They dropped a temperature probe into the gap. 10 degrees Celsius. In Siberia. In February. Impossible. Sora wrote quietly in her notebook. Heat is moving, not from above, from within. That night, she sat alone near the edge of the excavation site. The snow was silent, the sky dark. Then she noticed something strange, faint pulses in the snow around her boots. Not shaking, not sound, just small, regular softenings, as if the ground was taking tiny breaths. She crouched and placed her hand on the ice. Warm, then cold, then warm again. She whispered, "Are you alive?" Nothing answered, but the warmth stayed a little longer this time.
The next day brought heavy clouds. A dull gray sky hung over the camp, pressing down like a lid. No wind, no birds, just stillness. Inside the shelter, Sora spread out her notes beside hand-drawn maps and gas readings. The pattern was clear now. Each site of flame appeared on a curve. The gas didn't just escape. It moved, like it followed invisible lines under the ice. Lena entered with a thermos of hot tea. "You haven't slept, have you?" Sora smiled faintly. "A few hours. The land doesn't sleep either." Later that afternoon, a visitor arrived. He was a man from the local Evenki community, an elder named Ali Khan, wrapped in reindeer skin, his boots thick with snow. Malik introduced him quietly. "He knows this place well," Malik said. "Lived here his whole life." Sora shook his hand, careful not to rush. Ali Khan walked to the map and traced a weathered finger over the flame marks. "My grandfather told stories," he said in a low, clear voice, "about fire that walks beneath the snow. It comes in deep winter, never stays long, never comes twice to the same place." Sora asked gently, "What did they call it?" He thought for a moment. "Khatar. What does it mean?" Ali Khan looked out the window. The breath of the earth. Later, by the fire, he shared more. "In the old times, when animals vanished or trees died too early, we said the land was remembering something, a pain, a warning. The fire under snow meant the land was restless, hungry, or afraid." Sora wrote down every word. That night, the ground pulsed again. Sensors picked it up at 4 different sites, tiny rises in temperature, matched by sudden pressure drops. But there was no gas release, no flame, just movement. Lena whispered, "It's like the land is breathing again." Sora stood outside in the snow, eyes closed. She imagined the ground below, filled with frozen time, roots, bones, and ancient gases, waiting under pressure. She remembered something from school. Methane hydrate, a strange material, ice that holds gas. If the ice melts, the gas escapes, and if enough builds up, it could burn, quietly. Blue flame, no smoke. But methane alone wasn't enough to explain the rhythm, the warmth, the pulse. Sora drew a circle in the snow with her boot.
What if this isn't just gas escaping? She thought aloud. What if this is the land speaking? The next morning, Malik brought news. A sixth flame had appeared, closer than the others. No one lit it. It came on its own, burning for 10 full minutes before fading. There were no footprints near it, no wind, no birds, just fire and silence.
They had no more time to guess. The appearance of the sixth flame, on its own, without provocation, changed the tone at camp. What began as a scientific expedition had become something else. Urgent, fragile. Every small tremor in the ground felt like a whisper from something large beneath their feet. Sora led the team back to the sixth site the next morning. Snow had covered it again, as if the flame had never been there. But the ground was not the same. It was softer, spongy even. They brought the deep war drill. For 5 hours, the machine roared. The drill bit sank slowly into the permafrost, through frozen layers of earth and ancient plant matter. At 8.7 meters, the drill shuddered and dropped suddenly. Hollow, Malik said. We've hit something. They lowered a camera. At first, the screen showed only darkness. Then, walls of glistening white, streaked with fine golden veins. A chamber, smooth, about 3 meters wide, and inside it, a pocket of pure, unmixed methane. Sora stared. The gas was held in ice, but loosely, like it had formed recently, not millions of years ago. That's too shallow for ancient hydrate, she said. It's new. Yuri leaned in. Could the warmth from the surface have triggered it? No, she answered. It's coming from below. They backed away carefully, knowing the danger. A spark near the surface might be safe, but a full chamber of gas could ignite with force. That night, while reviewing footage, Lana paused the video. Look at this, she said, pointing. Tiny bubbles were rising, slowly, from the ice at the bottom of the chamber. Breathing, Sora whispered. It's still forming. Later that evening, the storm arrived. Winds howled across the open land. Snow fell in thick sideways sheets. Visibility dropped to nearly zero. They stayed inside until the light came. It wasn't lightning, and it wasn't flame. It was a glow, slow and pulsing, spreading like a wave across the snow-covered field. From the window, they saw rings of blue fire rising in silence, one after another, like eyes blinking open. Don't go out, Malik warned. But Sora stepped to the threshold of the shelter and opened the door. The wind hit her like a wall, but she held still. The flames were not wild. They flickered calmly in the distance, each one a perfect circle of soft fire. They gave off no heat, yet the snow around them steamed. Then, as quickly as it came, the glow faded, the wind dropped, and darkness returned. The team was silent. Finally, Yuri spoke. What was that? Sora answered almost in a whisper. A release, not just of gas, of memory. Malik looked at her. Memory? She nodded. The earth has been holding something in, and tonight it exhaled. The storm passed, but something had changed. The land had spoken, and it was not finished.
A warning in the ice. The next morning, the field was quiet. Too quiet. Where the glowing flames had danced the night before, only blackened patches remained. The snow had melted into wet circles, revealing dark, cracked earth. The air smelled faintly of ash and something older, mineral, earthy, metallic. The sensors had recorded everything. Sora reviewed the data with Lena and Malik. The pressure spikes were enormous, a massive release of gas, not from one pocket but from many, all at once, a chain reaction. If this happened in a city, Malik said, it would have been an explosion. But it wasn't. It was gentle, coordinated. Yuri joined them at the table, pale and shaken. He had been outside early to check the borehole. "It's gone," he said. "What do you mean, gone?" Sora asked. "The chamber collapsed. No fire, no smoke, but it sealed, like the ground closed itself." They hiked to the site. He was right. Where the drill had opened the earth, the hole was now filled with compacted snow and frozen dirt, smooth, undisturbed, as if it had never been touched. Ali Khan, the Evanki elder, returned that afternoon. He looked at the blackened rings with no surprise. "This is what happens when the land breathes too long," he said. "It must close again, or everything wakes up." "Everything?" Sora asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he handed her a small carved stone, round with a spiral engraved in the center. "Our ancestors used this to remember the fire beneath the snow. You should take it." That night, Sora sat alone outside the shelter. No wind, no stars, just the heavy silence of snow and sky. She held the carved stone in her palm and thought of the patterns, the rings, the pulse, the warm breath beneath the ice. What had they really discovered? Not just trapped gas, not just thawing permafrost, but a rhythm, a memory, a message. The Earth wasn't simply releasing pressure, it was responding. To what? They still didn't know. The next morning, the expedition packed to leave. Their permits had expired, and the storm damage made the camp unstable. But Sora remained for one last reading. She walked to the center of the first flame site, the original one, and placed a sensor deep into the ground. Then she waited. And just before she turned to go, she felt it again. A gentle pulse beneath her boots. Warmth. Then a spark. A single flame rose from the snow. Quiet. Perfect. Blue. No sound, no fear. Just fire. As if the earth had decided to say goodbye. Sora nodded once and whispered, "We heard you." Then she turned and walked away.
Learning recap. The ice that burns like fire. Vocabulary words with simple definitions. Permafrost. Ground that stays frozen all year round. Methane. A gas that can burn easily and is often trapped under the ground. Chamber. A closed space under the ground or inside something. Pulse. A regular beat or rhythm, like a heartbeat. Sensor. A tool that measures things like temperature or movement. Collapse. When something falls in or caves inward. Flame. The part of a fire that you can see. Release. To let something go or come out. Pattern. A repeated design or regular way something happens. Spiral. A shape that winds in a circle, slowly moving outward or inward. Sentence patterns for practice. It looked ordinary, but Use this to describe something surprising or unexpected. The ground was warm as if. Use as if to imagine something that's not directly visible. What if? Great for expressing a curious or imaginative question. The land had spoken. A poetic way to say nature has shown a sign or message. They had never seen anything like it. Useful for describing new or mysterious experiences. Comprehension questions. What strange phenomenon did the scientists observe in the snow? Why was the flame called the breath of the earth by the local elder? What did the scientists discover inside the chamber beneath the permafrost? Why was the pattern of the flames important to Sora? How did the last flame behave differently from the others? What emotions did Sora feel as she observed the final flame? What message do you think the story wants to share about the natural world? Discussion prompt. Do you think the Earth can remember things in the way this story describes? How might this idea change the way we study or treat natural environments?